Well, howdy ho there, friends. How are we doing today? Hope you're all doing absolutely peachy keen, fantastic, and full of love of the Lord, and all that good stuff. So, recently, I was in the attempt to make a tier list for 40k and all the different factions within it. But as I was making the tier list, I realized that I had negative things to say about certain factions, and that certain factions I really didn't like as much. But I thought I want to promote more positivity rather than negativity, so instead of just dunking on factions that I'm not as big of a fan of, I thought it would be kind of interesting to talk about some factions that I don't like as much, but I still think have some cool elements. And for this particular faction we're going to talk about today, I don't know if you can tell from the weird paint job on this Gilliman, but if you scroll up, it's Adeptus Custodes! Now, I will say right off the bat, a lot of people love Adeptus Custodes. I really cannot count myself among that number, but I'm very glad that people love them, and I'm very glad that people have as much fun with them as they do. I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to get into too much of the negatives. I've just always thought that they were maybe a little bit too strong individually in the lore, to the point where they kind of start to feel more like anime characters to me among, like, the sci-fi fantasy guy. Although some people are definitely still anime characters because of the way they act. But, and I don't really like their color scheme. And, well, I'm also not a big fan of the Emperor, as some of you may know, but, we're putting all that aside so we can find a couple models we like and a little bit of things we like from their lore. And I can start with the lore pretty easily, and you can just have these guys up here. This is from this Warhammer community article, Golden Gods. So this is the community staffers miniatures and like the way they painted them and all that kind of fun stuff. And I think some of them are pretty neato. At least they looks like they put a lot of time and effort into them, and I think that's very cool, and I'm glad they did so. But one thing I will definitely say that I think is really cool is the idea that the Emperor has individually made each one, and that like they are like just humanity, but rather than like this kind of like mass-produced thing that you get with the Space Marine, where you get lots of like little flaws, and there's lots of possibilities for the genetics to like mess you up. Like you can turn into a wolfen, or you can turn into something crazy. Or you get the desire to drink everybody's blood, or half of you turn traitor at like, you know, 10,000 years ago, so now you're like constantly on the lookout, making sure that everyone thinks you're super loyal. I know that's not technically a flaw in the gene seed, but I kind of think of it as a flaw in the gene seed. But these guys are like individually crafted, and each of them has like all of these crazy strength and all this stuff built into them. They're like the pinnacle of like genetic modification and like genetic engineering from like the Imperium. And you can see that the Imperium does have the ability to create some very powerful, very interesting soldiers without like all the crazy flaws. And it also kind of leads some credence to the whole idea of, oh, it's kind of interesting to think about the Space Marines as like kind of mass produced, and it leads into the whole Horus Heresy thing of, well, part of the reason they like betrayed is because everything was being rushed, and the Emperor had his own plans and didn't want to share them. But then you have people like the Custodes, who seems to confide in a little bit more and seem a little bit more like companions rather than just tools, a little bit anyway. And I think that that's pretty interesting. I think that aspect of them is pretty cool. And they also do have like the best equipment, etc., all that. The only umbrage I take with that is that they all wear gold, and I don't think that everybody wearing gold is the greatest. I think that the Emperor has kind of a gaudy taste, honestly. But they still, I think overall the armor itself looks pretty neat. Where I do tend to not like a lot of the armor tends to come down mostly to the heads. I think the heads on these guys don't look the greatest. Not necessarily the worst either. I mean, I was a fan of High Elves, and they have kind of a similar thing going on. But if you look at, for instance, like Isle of Blood, they kind of toned it down a little bit, and I think that's pretty good. I think some of the Custodes, they look like these guys don't look quite as weird to me as these guys. I think these guys have bigger helmets, and maybe I'm just like looking at it wrong. Maybe their helmets aren't actually bigger, but they kind of seem like they might be a bit bigger. They also have Terminators that don't look quite as, not quite as silly as some of the Space Marine Terminators. And we will start with the first model I actually like here, which is this guy here. I think that these old dreadnoughts are actually pretty cool, and I think that they look kind of cool when they're like less boxy and things like that. And then we will go to another miniature that I like, and where I think the Custodes style works pretty well. This guy is the Blade Champion. This is one of the only Custodes models that I've actually wanted to grab and paint. It's like one of the only ones I thought was pretty cool, and I kind of wanted to use them almost like as a Space Marine captain or something like that instead, because, you know, I do sometimes play Space Marines. But I do think that this guy's cool, and I really like the effect that they have on the blade here. As I was looking at miniatures, though, I did notice something kind of interesting, which was that it seems like some Custodes are painted a little bit differently. Like, if you look, you're not gonna be able to see all the details here, I think, but if you just like look at these guys here in comparison to this guy, it does kind of seem to me like their gold is just like darker and different color. And I kind of thought that on the web page they really went for trying to make them look as similar as possible. And you can't tell as much with this guy, but you can definitely tell it with this set here, I think. One second, let me shrink this a little bit. This set here, I think you can really tell that these guys, I don't know if it's because they're from the Horse Heresy, so maybe they just have different art style a little bit, and they decided to paint these guys a lot darker. But it's kind of interesting. I actually think that the darker gold looks a good deal better than this lighter gold. Obviously, though, that is just preference, and you know, you can paint them however you want. But I do like this darker gold a bit more, although it almost doesn't even really look like gold at that point. But you know, that's not the worst thing ever. It reminds me of like armor I've seen Ruggle Doran in. And yeah, these guys are probably, I think honestly the Horse Heresy does have some pretty neat models for basically everybody, whether you're just like Space Marines or something like that. I keep forgetting that these guys are a thing that you can just like take, which is the Talons of the Emperor. Like these two colors here, I don't hate this gold, but I like this one a little bit more. I think I like Alea, and she's technically part of the Adeptus Custodes in the sense of the faction, so the Talons of the Emperor and all that. I think she's a really cool model, actually. So yeah, there we go, a little bit of something cool. And I do also think that sometimes in the art they look really neat. It's kind of crazy to think about, like, the fact that there's only 10,000 of them and they're going out into the universe now to kill and destroy all these bad things, and they're trying to protect humanity and protect the Emperor's dream and all that. That's pretty neat, I think. I think that you could definitely get a lot worse in terms of, like, motivation and bad guy stuff. Even if I don't particularly like the Emperor, but, you know, hey, that's just one cat's opinion. Anyway, like I said, I wanted to go and talk about some of the more positive stuff. Also, some of the old Horus Heresy art for the Custodes, I think it looks really cool. I like that they have this weird moaning, screaming face on their knees. I think that's pretty cool. And after all, if everybody is beloved of the Lord and everybody is a child of the Lord, then I have to also get along with folks who are not the bestest favorite. Oops. Now remember, if God loves everybody, you got to get along with all kinds of people, and even factions you don't really like, you should try to find something positive about them, even if they seem horrible or evil, or in this case, just kind of not super my thing. Not a mean Jimmy Dean. And yeah, I don't know. I think some of the art looks pretty cool. I kind of like that they have female Custodes now. I hope they release some female Custodes miniatures. I like the idea that the Emperor has male and female companions. You could get into whether or not it made sense the way they introduced it, but I mean, it's Warhammer, man. They retcon stuff all the time. It's just one of the things they do. Anyway, I just wanted to share my thoughts, and you know, like I said, I wanted to be more positive on the Adeptus Custodes, because when I was first making that video, at least, I was like, man, I'm way more down on these guys than I should be. They're not really that bad. there's definitely worse, but yeah. Also, this art is really cool. I really like the blues. The blues against the gold there is really pretty. I think the gold in the artwork looks a lot better than it does on the miniature, and I don't know why that is. I don't know what it is about the miniature just not looking as good with the gold, but like in artwork, it looks pretty good. Like that looks pretty cool, right? Anyway, that's all I wanted to say for now. So thanks for stopping by. I am now going to go return and listen to our more videos on lizard monitors, because they're really cool and I really like them. Anyway, I hope that you all have a great one, and I hope that you know that I love you and God loves you, and bye, love you, bye, and remember to be positive and be cool out there. Okie dokie, artoki, okie dokie, bye, bye, look at me, bye.